She demanded, "We're opening this marriage or I'm gone," after 4 years, so I agreed, and her sister confessed, "I've waited so long for this." Now my ex cries, "How could you both betray me?" while living in a studio apartment. Sometimes the people who demand freedom the most are the least prepared to handle what comes with it. I met Melissa 4 years ago at a charity auction in Portland, one of those upscale events where local businesses donate experiences and the proceeds go to homeless youth services. I'm Brian, 33, cloud infrastructure engineer pulling in $178,000 annually, the kind of guy who spends weekdays optimizing server architecture and weekends running along the Willamette River. Melissa was 26, this stunning blonde with infectious energy, working the registration table in a flowy bohemian dress that somehow made volunteer work look glamorous. She had a certificate in holistic nutrition and worked part-time at a yoga studio, but what really drew me in was how she talked about building something meaningful, creating a wellness brand that would help people live more authentic lives. We exchanged numbers, went for coffee the next day at this organic place she loved, and I found myself completely captivated by her vision and passion. She talked about gut health, mindfulness, the toxicity of hustle culture, how modern society was disconnected from true wellness, and I admired someone who wanted to make a difference rather than just chase a paycheck. 6 weeks into dating, she showed up at my Pearl District penthouse with 2 suitcases and tears streaming down her face, claiming her landlord had been making inappropriate comments and she felt unsafe in her apartment. I didn't hesitate, told her to stay as long as she needed, cleared out my home office to give her space, and within a month we'd fallen into this comfortable domestic routine where she was essentially living with me full-time. She mentioned wanting to quit the yoga studio to focus on building her wellness platform, said the $14 per hour wasn't sustainable and the schedule made it impossible to create quality content, and I offered to support her financially while she got her brand off the ground. It seemed like a reasonable investment in our future together, in someone I was falling in love with, in a partnership where I provided stability while she pursued her passion. Her younger sister Rachel came to my penthouse for the first time about 2 months into our relationship, showing up for what Melissa called a mandatory family dinner. Rachel was 29, an emergency room nurse with this no-nonsense demeanor that came from spending 12-hour shifts dealing with trauma and chaos, and she looked around my place with an expression I couldn't quite read. We made small talk while Melissa filmed content in the bedroom, Rachel asking about my work and seeming genuinely interested in cloud infrastructure despite it being objectively boring to most people, and I found myself enjoying her direct communication style and sharp sense of humor. After dinner, while Melissa was in the bathroom, Rachel pulled me aside near my kitchen island and said something I'd replay in my mind countless times over the next 4 years. She looked uncomfortable, like she was violating some unspoken code, then said quietly that Melissa had a pattern of moving in with boyfriends quickly, always having some crisis that required rescue, always needing financial support for the next big project that never quite materialized. I appreciate the concern, but Melissa and I are different, I told her, feeling slightly defensive. What we have is real. Rachel nodded slowly with this sad knowing look that said she'd heard that exact response before. I hope you're right, she said softly. I just don't want to see you get hurt. I dismissed it as sibling rivalry, as the kind of family dysfunction that happens when one sister is artistic and free-spirited while the other is practical and skeptical, and I felt slightly protective of Melissa against what seemed like unfair judgment. Looking back now, standing in the wreckage of everything that came after, I realized Rachel had been trying to throw me a lifeline before I drowned, but I was too infatuated to grab it. That first year with Melissa felt like living in a wellness magazine spread. Our penthouse transformed into this Instagram-perfect sanctuary with meditation cushions, essential oil diffusers, altar spaces with crystals and sage, and ring lights positioned in every room with good natural lighting. She'd wake up at 6 a.m. to film morning routine content, and I'd head to work feeling like I was supporting something beautiful and meaningful. The financial arrangement seemed simple enough at first. I covered the $3,400 monthly penthouse fees, utilities, groceries from the organic market she insisted on, and gave her access to my credit card for business expenses related to content creation. She leased a Range Rover for $890 monthly because, as she explained, wellness influencers need to project success and abundance to attract the right opportunities, and I agreed it made sense from a branding perspective even though it made my financially conservative brain twitch slightly. The content creation expenses started modest: a $1,200 ring light setup, an $800 camera upgrade, but gradually escalated to $2,200 to $3,500 monthly for professional filming equipment, editing software subscriptions, and props for her wellness flatlays. She attended wellness retreats and networking conferences constantly, dropping $700 to $1,100 monthly on events in Sedona, Ojai, Tulum, places where influencers gathered to collaborate and cross-promote, and she'd come back energized with new ideas and promises of partnerships that were definitely going to happen this time. I tracked every expense in a spreadsheet, not because I was controlling but because I'm an engineer and that's how my brain works, and over 4 years I watched the investment in Melissa's wellness empire climb to approximately $420,000. Her Instagram account grew to 8,200 followers, respectable but not exactly influencer territory, and she'd secured exactly 3 small sponsorships totaling $2,800 over 4 years, a tea company that sent her free products, a yoga mat brand that paid $400 for a post, and a supplement company that gave her $2,400 for a 3-month partnership. The math didn't work, obviously. I was spending $105,000 annually to support a venture generating less than $1,000 per year, but whenever I gently raised concerns about timeline or strategy, Melissa had responses ready that made me feel like the problem. "You don't understand the influencer economy, Brian," she'd say, scrolling through her phone while I tried to have a serious conversation. "Building authentic community takes time. I refuse to compromise my values by promoting products I don't believe in just to make quick money." When I suggested maybe scaling back the retreat budget or finding part-time work to contribute, she'd look at me with this wounded expression and say I was being emotionally unavailable, that my corporate mindset was exactly the toxic hustle culture she was trying to help people escape. She started weaponizing therapy language, turning every financial discussion into an accusation that I didn't support her authentic self, that my questions about ROI revealed I didn't actually believe in her vision. I'd find myself apologizing for being practical, for applying the same analytical thinking to our finances that I used in my career, for apparently being the kind of man who valued spreadsheets over supporting his partner's dreams. Her influencer friends became constant fixtures at the penthouse, showing up for content collaboration sessions where they'd rearrange my furniture for better lighting, consume the $300 worth of organic groceries I'd bought that week, and treat me like background staff when I'd appear between meetings. They'd make jokes about my corporate energy, mock my button-down shirts and structured schedule, discuss how exhausting it must be for Melissa to live with someone so trapped in the matrix, and she'd laugh along like I wasn't standing right there. "Ryan's very left-brained," she'd say with this condescending smile. "He doesn't really get the creative process." I started working later, spending more time at the office, finding excuses to take calls in my car, anything to avoid the uncomfortable feeling of being an outsider in my own home while funding the party. Melissa posted constantly about toxic masculinity, financial freedom, breaking free from patriarchal control structures, and I'd see these posts while literally paying for her existence and wonder if the irony ever occurred to her. She'd share quotes about women not needing men to complete them while using my credit card for her morning matcha, post about smashing the patriarchy while driving the Range Rover I leased, lecture her followers about authentic living while performing a completely manufactured lifestyle funded entirely by my salary. The cognitive dissonance was staggering, but whenever I pointed it out gently, she'd accuse me of mansplaining feminism or trying to control her voice. Rachel would text me occasionally, just checking in, asking how I was doing in this careful way that suggested she knew exactly how I was doing. "Everything good with you and Mel?" she'd ask, and I'd respond with generic positivity because admitting the truth felt like admitting I'd made a massive mistake. Sometimes she'd invite me to grab coffee when Melissa was at a retreat, and we'd talk about work, life, normal things that didn't involve performative wellness or financial drain, and those conversations felt like coming up for air after being underwater too long. The worst part wasn't the money, honestly. I made good income and could afford to be generous. It was the growing realization that Melissa saw me as a resource rather than a partner, that I'd become the human embodiment of her financial infrastructure rather than someone she actually loved. But I'd invested 4 years, for $120,000, my entire adult home into this relationship, and the sunk cost fallacy is real when you're trying to convince yourself that the person you fell for is still in there somewhere beneath the performative spirituality and casual contempt. The breaking point came during a couples therapy session I'd reluctantly agreed to after Melissa accused me of being emotionally distant and unsupportive. I'd resisted therapy for months, not because I didn't believe in it, but because I knew Melissa would weaponize it like she weaponized everything else, turning professional guidance into another tool to validate her narrative that I was the problem. We sat in this comfortable office in Northwest Portland, me in my work clothes because I'd come straight from a client meeting, Melissa in her athleisure outfit looking perfectly curated for the Instagram story she'd inevitably post about prioritizing mental health. The therapist, a soft-spoken woman named Dr. Chen, asked us to share what we hoped to gain from counseling, and I started talking about wanting better communication around finances and feeling more like partners than landlord and tenant. Melissa let me finish, then took a deep breath like she was preparing to deliver something profound. "I need to be honest about something I've been feeling for a while now," she said, not looking at me. "I've been feeling trapped and unfulfilled in this relationship. Monogamy feels like an outdated patriarchal control structure, and I think we need relationship evolution." I sat there processing those words, relationship evolution, wondering what wellness blog had taught her that particular euphemism. "What does that mean exactly?" I asked, though I already knew where this was going. "I think we should open our marriage," she said, finally meeting my eyes with this defiant expression. "I need the freedom to explore connections with other people, to not feel confined by traditional relationship structures that were designed to control women's sexuality and agency." The therapist looked between us, clearly not expecting this bombshell in our third session. "And have you discussed this with Brian before today?" "I'm discussing it now," Melissa said, "in a safe space where we can process it together." Except we weren't processing anything together. She was ambushing me with a unilateral decision disguised as couples therapy homework. "I don't want an open marriage," I said, my voice surprisingly calm despite feeling like the floor had dropped out beneath me. "I want a committed partnership with someone who actually wants to be with me." "This isn't about not wanting to be with you," she said, using that patient tone she reserved for explaining complex wellness concepts to her followers. "It's about evolving beyond possessive relationship models. We can still love each other while honoring our individual needs for growth and exploration." Growth and exploration, code for she wanted to sleep with other people while keeping my penthouse and credit card. "So let me understand this correctly," I said, looking at Dr. Chen. "After 4 years together, she's announcing in therapy that she wants an open marriage, and if I don't agree, what happens?" Melissa's face hardened. "If you can't support my authentic needs, then maybe we're not compatible anymore. I'm not going to keep suppressing who I am to make you comfortable. I'm giving you 72 hours to decide," she added, like she was negotiating a business deal instead of dismantling our relationship. "If you can't accept this, I'll move out immediately." The therapist tried to intervene, suggesting we slow down and explore these feelings more carefully, but Melissa was already standing up, grabbing her designer handbag, the one I'd bought her for Christmas. "I've said what I needed to say. Brian knows where I stand." That evening, I sat alone in my penthouse staring at the city lights and feeling this strange mix of devastation and relief. My phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. "Hey, can we talk? I heard about the therapy session. Melissa called our mom." I called her back immediately. "How much did she tell you?" "Enough," Rachel said carefully. "Brian, I need to tell you something, and I should have told you this a long time ago. Melissa's been seeing someone for the past 2 months. His name is Dominic. He runs those luxury wellness retreats in Portland and Sedona. The ones she's been attending." The confirmation of what I'd already suspected should have hurt more, but instead it just made everything click into place. The late nights, the expensive trips, the sudden need for an open marriage, she'd already found her next resource and wanted permission to explore it while keeping me as her safety net. "I'm sorry," Rachel continued. "I know this is awful timing, but I couldn't let her blindside you completely. She's been posting about him in her close friend's story, calling him her twin flame and spiritual catalyst. Thanks for telling me, I said. I mean it. You've been more honest with me than she has in months. The next day, I did something I should have done years ago. I consulted a divorce attorney to understand my options and protect my assets. Oregon isn't a community property state, but I needed to know exactly where I stood legally if this went south. The attorney reviewed my documentation, all those spreadsheets I'd kept tracking expenses, and whistled low. You've been essentially funding her lifestyle completely? Yeah, I admitted. I thought I was investing in our future. Well, the good news is you're not married, so you have no legal obligation to continue supporting her. If you decide to end this, you can walk away clean. That night, Melissa came home from another content creation session with her influencer friends and found me sitting on the couch. Have you made your decision? She asked, not even bothering with small talk. I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw a stranger wearing the face of someone I used to love. I said. We'll open the marriage. Her eyes widened, clearly not expecting me to agree. Really? You're okay with this? If that's what you need to be happy, then yes. I lied, already thinking about the attorney's advice and the exit strategy one was building. Thank you for being evolved about this, she said, actually smiling. I think this is going to be really good for both of us. She left an hour later for a wellness dinner, probably with Dominic, and I sat there feeling nothing but cold clarity about what came next. Rachel texted me the next evening asking if I wanted to grab dinner, said she wanted to check on me after everything that had happened with Melissa's therapy bombshell. We met at this quiet Italian place in southeast Portland, far enough from my neighborhood that we wouldn't run into any of Melissa's influencer crowd, and when Rachel walked in wearing jeans and a simple sweater, looking tired from a 12-hour shift, I felt something shift in my chest. How are you really doing? She asked once we'd ordered, and the genuine concern in her voice almost broke something in me. Honestly? I don't even know, I admitted. I agreed to the open marriage, but I'm also talking to a divorce attorney. I feel like I'm playing chess while she thinks we're playing checkers. Good, Rachel said firmly. She's been using you for years, Brian. I've watched it happen and felt helpless to stop it because every time I tried to warn you, you defended her. We talked for hours, about Melissa's pattern of exploitation, about my mounting resentment, about how I'd lost myself somewhere in the process of funding someone else's fantasy life. Rachel told me about growing up with Melissa, how their parents had struggled financially and Melissa had developed this obsession with wealth and status as a way to prove she'd escaped their trailer park roots. She used to say she'd never be poor again, that she'd do whatever it took to live the life she deserved, Rachel said. I just didn't realize that meant using good people as stepping stones. Why didn't you ever tell me this before? I asked. I tried that first time we met, remember? But you were in love, and I didn't want to overstep. And honestly, she paused, looking down at her wine glass, I had my own reasons for keeping my distance. What do you mean? Rachel took a deep breath. I've had feelings for you since we first met at Melissa's birthday party 4 years ago. I saw how kind you were, how thoughtful, how you actually listened when people talked. But you were with my sister, and I wasn't going to interfere with that, even when I could see she was treating you like a bank account instead of a partner. I sat there stunned, processing this confession. Rachel, I had no idea. That was the point, she said softly. I stayed silent out of loyalty to family, but watching Melissa exploit you and disrespect you over these past 4 years has been unbearable. And now with this open marriage manipulation, I just couldn't stay quiet anymore. The attraction between us had always been there, I realized, buried under layers of appropriateness and family dynamics, but undeniable in how easy our conversations flowed, how comfortable I felt around her compared to the constant performance required with Melissa. I don't know what to do with this information, I said honestly. You don't have to do anything, Rachel replied. I just needed you to know that not everyone in Melissa's life sees you as a resource. Some of us see you for who you actually are. We started meeting for coffee, then dinners, then long walks through Forest Park where we could talk without worrying about running into people we knew. Rachel would tell me about her work at the hospital, the trauma cases that stayed with her, the small victories that made the exhausting shifts worthwhile, and I found myself genuinely interested in a way I hadn't been with Melissa's influencer drama in years. We'd browse Powell's books together, Rachel gravitating toward medical thrillers and biographies while I picked up tech industry analyses, and we'd sit in the coffee shop comparing our finds and debating everything from healthcare policy to artificial intelligence ethics. She insisted on paying for half of everything, would actually argue with me if I tried to cover the whole check, and that simple act of financial equality felt revolutionary after years of being treated like a human ATM. "I make good money as an ER nurse," she said when I tried to pay for dinner one night. "And I believe in being an equal partner, not a dependent." 6 weeks into our reconnection, we were at a Trailblazers game, sitting in seats I'd bought back when I thought Melissa might actually enjoy doing normal couple things with me, and Rachel grabbed my hand during a timeout. "Is this okay?" she asked, and the fact that she asked, that she cared about my comfort and consent, made me realize how long it had been since someone had treated me with basic respect. "Yeah," I said. "It's more than okay." We kissed in the parking garage after the game, and it felt like coming home after years of being lost. Rachel was everything Melissa wasn't: emotionally available, financially independent, genuinely interested in my life beyond what I could provide for her. She worked grueling 12-hour shifts saving lives, volunteered at free clinics on her days off, and still made time to ask about my projects at work and actually listen to the answers. "Tell me about the cloud migration you're working on," she'd say, and then ask follow-up questions that proved she was actually paying attention. Meanwhile, Melissa was barely home anymore, spending 3 or 4 nights a week at Dominic's place, posting cryptic Instagram stories about twin flames and spiritual awakening while I documented every transaction and built my exit strategy. She'd come home occasionally to change clothes and grab more of her things, treating my penthouse like a luxury storage unit, and she seemed genuinely pleased that I wasn't questioning her whereabouts or demanding her time. "I'm so glad you're being mature about this," she said one morning, packing another bag for a week-long retreat in Sedona. "Most men would be so insecure and controlling." "I want you to be happy," I said, which was technically true. I wanted her to be happy somewhere far away from my bank account. The irony was that I'd never felt more clear-headed and emotionally stable than I did during those weeks with Rachel, like I'd been living in a fog for 4 years and was finally seeing daylight. Everything changed on a Tuesday afternoon when I was in a meeting and my phone started exploding with texts from Melissa. "We need to talk now. Call me immediately. I know what you've been doing." I excused myself from the conference room and called her back, genuinely confused about what had triggered this meltdown. "What's going on?" "Don't play innocent with me," she hissed. "I know about Rachel." My stomach dropped. "What are you talking about?" "I hired a private investigator, Brian. I had a feeling something was off when you stopped caring about my life, when you weren't jealous or asking questions. Turns out I was right to be suspicious." She'd hired a PI, with whose money I wondered, probably mine. "The investigator took photos of you and Rachel at that restaurant in Hood River last week. Holding hands. Kissing. Looking very much like a couple. The investigator had captured us on our weekend trip to the Columbia River Gorge, a beautiful day where we'd driven out to escape the city and just be together without hiding." "You're unbelievable," Melissa continued, her voice shaking with rage. "Opening our relationship was supposed to be about freedom and growth, not about you sneaking around with my own sister behind my back." The hypocrisy was so staggering I almost laughed. "Melissa, you demanded an open marriage so you could be with Dominic. You've been staying at his place 3 nights a week. How is this any different?" "It's completely different. Rachel is my sister. That's a sacred boundary that you both crossed. This is family betrayal at the deepest level." "You've been cheating on me for months," I said, my voice calm and cold. "You manipulated me into agreeing to an open marriage so you could pursue your yoga retreat boyfriend guilt-free, and now you're angry that I found someone who actually treats me like a human being instead of a wallet? That's not the same thing and you know it. What you did is disgusting. Sleeping with my sister while we're still together, while you're still living off my emotional labor and support." Living off her emotional labor, the delusion was genuinely impressive. "I'm done with this conversation," I said. If you want to talk, you can talk to my attorney. Your attorney? What are you talking about? I'm serving you with eviction papers, Melissa. You have 30 days to move out of my penthouse. I heard her sharp intake of breath. You can't just kick me out. I live there. I have rights. You're not on the lease, you don't pay rent, and Oregon law is very clear about this. I've already consulted with an attorney. This is because of Rachel, isn't it? She's been poisoning you against me this whole time, telling you lies about our relationship. The only person who poisoned our relationship was you, when you decided I was just a financial safety net instead of a partner you actually loved. I do love you. I just needed space to explore other connections while maintaining what we built together. What we built? Melissa, I built everything. I paid for everything. Your car, your retreats, your influencer equipment, your entire lifestyle for 4 years while you contributed nothing except contempt and financial drain. She started crying then, but they were angry, frustrated tears, not genuine remorse. I can't believe you're doing this. After everything we've been through together. I'll have the papers delivered tomorrow, I said. And Melissa? I know about Dominic, I've known for months. Rachel told me before you demanded the open marriage. I have documentation of every financial transaction over the past 4 years, every wellness retreat, every piece of equipment, every credit card charge. If you try to claim any legal right to my assets, I will bury you in evidence. The line went silent. Then, in a small voice, you've been planning this? I've been protecting myself from someone who saw me as a resource instead of a person. There's a difference. I hung up and immediately called my attorney to move forward with the eviction process and finalize the documentation I'd been preparing. Then I called Rachel. Melissa knows about us, I said. A PI took photos. I figured that might happen eventually, Rachel said calmly. How do you feel about it? Honestly? Relieved. I'm tired of hiding, tired of pretending, tired of letting her control the narrative. She's going to make this ugly, Rachel warned. She's going to paint us as the villains and herself as the victim. Let her, I said. Anyone who knows the real story will see through it. The next day, a courier delivered the eviction notice to Melissa at the penthouse while she was home between trips. She immediately started blowing up my phone, alternating between rage and desperate pleading. Please don't do this, we can work through this. You're destroying 4 years over a misunderstanding. I'll change, I'll get a real job, I'll contribute financially. Rachel manipulated both of us, can't you see that? I didn't respond to any of it, just forwarded everything to my attorney as documentation of her instability. What I didn't tell Melissa was that I'd also discovered something interesting while reviewing our financial records. She'd signed a cohabitation agreement 2 years ago when I'd refinanced my penthouse mortgage. She'd signed without reading it because she was too spiritually evolved for legal nonsense, but that agreement explicitly stated she had no claim to my property or assets, and that I could terminate her residence with 30 days' notice for any reason. My attorney had been thrilled when I'd found that document buried in my files. Melissa tried everything over the next week, showing up at my office building, sending her influencer friends to guilt-trip me, even getting her mother to call and lecture me about abandoning her daughter. But the most desperate move came when she posted a long Instagram story about narcissistic abuse, financial control, and being gaslit by her partner, painting herself as a victim of my manipulation while conveniently leaving out every detail about Dominic, the open marriage demand, or the $420,000 I'd spent supporting her non-existent career. Rachel saw the post and texted me immediately. She's really going full victim mode. Let her, I replied. Anyone who matters knows the truth. The eviction period was exactly as ugly as Rachel predicted, but I stood firm, and 30 days later, Melissa was out of my penthouse and out of my life. 3 months after Melissa moved out, Rachel showed me a news article on her phone while we were having coffee. You need to see this, she said, looking somewhere between shocked and satisfied. The headline read, Luxury Wellness Retreat Owner Faces Fraud Charges in Multi-State Investigation. Dominic's smiling face stared back from the article, the same photo he used on his retreat website. According to the report, Federal investigators had discovered he'd been running an elaborate multi-level marketing scheme disguised as spiritual investment opportunities, defrauding clients of over $2 million across multiple states. He'd convinced hundreds of people to invest in his wellness empire expansion, promising returns of 15 to 20% annually through equity stakes in new retreat centers and meditation apps that didn't actually exist. His luxury Portland retreat center was leased, not owned. The Sedona property was operating on maxed-out business credit cards. Now his assets were frozen, his retreats were shut down, and he was facing criminal charges with potential prison time of 10 to 15 years. "Oh my God," I said, scrolling through the article. "Melissa must be losing her mind." "Keep reading," Rachel said. "It gets better." The article mentions several influencers who'd publicly partnered with Dominic were facing backlash for promoting his fraudulent schemes. There was Melissa's Instagram handle, listed among the brand ambassadors, who'd recruited their audiences into his investment program. I pulled up Melissa's Instagram and found her comment sections absolutely destroyed. Former followers were posting screenshots of her promotional posts for Dominic's retreats, her glowing testimonials about his revolutionary wealth-building approach, her discount codes that gave her commission on recruits. "You took my money and destroyed my credit," one commenter wrote. "I invested $8,000 because you said Dominic was trustworthy." Another said, "My elderly mother gave him $15,000 from her retirement savings because you vouched for him." Her follower count had dropped from 8,200 to 1,200 in weeks. Her remaining sponsorships were gone. Nobody wanted association with someone connected to federal fraud. "There's more," Rachel continued. She had to move out of the place she was renting. Couldn't afford the $2,100 monthly rent without Dominic's support or your money. She's living in a 400-square-foot studio apartment in Gresham now, working at a supplement store for $16 per hour. Gresham, one of Portland's most affordable suburbs, a far cry from the Pearl District penthouse. "How do you know all this?" "Our mom told me." Melissa's been calling constantly, begging for money, asking to move back home. Mom told her she needs to figure out her own life for once. I pulled up Melissa's recent Instagram posts and found a dramatically different aesthetic. The photos were grainy, clearly taken with poor lighting in a cramped space. No more meditation altars and designer athleisure, just sad selfies with captions about soul tribe betrayal and discovering who your real friends are. She'd created burner accounts too, sending dozens of messages alternating between desperate pleas for financial help and angry rants. "I know I made mistakes, but I'm literally struggling to buy food. You both destroyed my life and career. You owe me something. I just need $1,500 to catch up on rent, please, Brian." Rachel had blocked all of them, never responding. I'd done the same. "She posted a GoFundMe," Rachel said, pulling up the page. "Looking for $25,000 to rebuild after financial abuse and betrayal by narcissistic ex-partner. She's raised $340. The description painted me as a controlling abuser who'd isolated her from career opportunities and left her destitute when she tried to establish independence. Zero mention of the $420,000 I'd invested in her lifestyle, the open marriage she demanded, or Dominic's fraud. The Range Rover had been repossessed 2 weeks after Dominic's arrest. Melissa was now taking public transit to her supplement store job, a humbling experience for someone who'd spent 4 years performing abundance and luxury on social media. "She asked our mom if she could move back in," Rachel said. "Mom said no. Told her she's 30 years old and needs to handle her own consequences." I thought about Melissa in that tiny studio apartment, probably sharing it with roommates, working retail after years of playing wellness influencer, watching her ex-boyfriend get arrested while her former life crumbled. Part of me felt genuinely sorry for how far she'd fallen, but the larger part recognized this as the natural consequence of treating people like resources instead of human beings. "Dominic's preliminary hearing is next month," Rachel said. "There's talk he might take a plea deal, 18 months in federal prison if he provides full restitution." Melissa had bet everything on Dominic being her meal ticket to permanent luxury, and instead he turned out to be a con artist who destroyed her credibility and left her worse off than when she started. How do you feel about all this? Rachel asked. Honestly? Grateful. Grateful I got out when I did, grateful I found you, grateful I didn't waste another 4 years on someone who never valued me. We left the coffee shop and I didn't look at Melissa's Instagram again, didn't check her messages, didn't engage with her desperate attempts to rewrite history, and she was living with the consequences while I built something real with someone who actually deserved my time and investment. 6 months later, Rachel and I moved into a craftsman home in Irvington, one of Portland's historic neighborhoods with tree-lined streets and front porches. We'd split the down payment equally and put both our names on the mortgage because that's what actual partners do. The difference between living with Rachel and living with Melissa was like comparing daylight to darkness. Rachel would come home from 12-hour ER shifts exhausted but still ask about my day, genuinely interested in my work projects. We'd cook dinner together, talk about hospital politics and tech industry trends, and I realized how starved I'd been for genuine intellectual engagement. I got the promotion, I told her one evening. Senior infrastructure architect, $215,000 base salary. Rachel dropped her paintbrush and threw her arms around me. Brian, that's incredible. I'm so proud of you. That simple, genuine celebration, without calculating how it benefited her, still felt revolutionary. We planned our wedding for the following spring, nothing Instagram-worthy, just family and close friends at a small venue overlooking the Columbia River. Rachel's family had embraced me completely, telling me at dinners they'd never liked Melissa's entitled attitude. These family gatherings became regular events with real conversations instead of performative spirituality. Meanwhile, Melissa's situation had deteriorated further. She was still in the Gresham studio with 2 roommates who complained about her filming influencer content at 6 a.m. The supplement store had cut her to part-time. She'd rebranded as a trauma recovery coach, posting about narcissistic abuse, but her audience remained at 800 followers. She claims she's writing a book about spiritual betrayal, Rachel told me. You and Dominic are both the villains. I didn't bother looking. Melissa's narrative didn't matter anymore. Dominic served 18 months in federal prison and emerged to work as a gym attendant. His wellness guru persona was destroyed, his properties sold to pay partial restitution. Victims recovered maybe 15 cents on the dollar. Do you ever feel bad for her? Rachel asked one night on our porch. Sometimes, I admitted, because she could have had something real and chose performance over substance every single time. Our wedding was small, intimate, focused on the relationship instead of content. Rachel wore a simple dress she'd found on sale because she didn't care about designer labels. We wrote our own vows, and when I promised to be her partner in building a life based on mutual respect and genuine contribution, I meant every word. A year into our marriage, Rachel told me she was pregnant. We're going to be parents, she said through tears. Our kid is going to be so loved. I thought about the life we were building, the nursery we'd plan, the finances where we both contributed, the genuine partnership where neither person was exploited. This was what Melissa could have had if she'd valued substance over performance. The last I heard, Melissa had moved to Seattle, working as a receptionist and dating a 24-year-old barista. She's still posting about manifestation, Rachel's mom mentioned. Still hasn't learned you can't manifest your way out of consequences. I felt nothing hearing that, no vindication or anger, just complete indifference to someone who'd once consumed my life. Rachel and I built something real, raised our daughter in that craftsman home, both advanced in our careers, and created a partnership based on mutual respect and authentic love. The most profound healing didn't come from Melissa's downfall or Dominic's prison sentence. It came from choosing someone who treated me like a partner instead of a resource, who built with me instead of taking from me, who valued substance over performance. Melissa had demanded an open marriage thinking she held all the cards, never imagining I'd find someone better or that her guru boyfriend was a con artist. She played a game she thought she'd mastered and lost everything that mattered, while I gained everything I'd been missing.